I told you. All right, y'all. Welcome to our September return back to school. It's fall now officially. To our September meeting with the Bronx Solid Waste Advisory Board. We are here today with a presentation from DSNY around curbside composting. And yeah, we're going to get into it. We're going to see and learn a whole lot more around what this means for the Bronx, what this means for individual um, residents. I don't think we'll touch on businesses too much today, but I do think that we look forward to this presentation. And Andrew, thank you so much for being present. I will give you access to share the screen in a little bit, but feel free to introduce yourself and we can just hop right into it.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay. Well, thanks, Dewar. And good evening, everyone. My name is Andrew Hoyles. I'm with Department of Sanitation in the Bureau of Public Affairs, and I was going to present on curbside composting, just generally on the program and its rollout for this fall. Services starting in the Bronx, Manhattan, and Staten Island in October, so there'll be a citywide program at that point. And then after I run through the slide that we have prepared, I'll take questions. Right, that's the format that we talked about. Like, we'll be able to have some questions. Okay, cool. So if you allow sharing privilege, then I will do so.
You got it.
Okay, give me 1 second. I have multiple monitors in front of
No,
me. It's
take
just
your
how the
time.
office setup
This
is,
is
so
this
it's
is
a
our
little.
time to dream up what Bronx compost means to us.
Here we go. Okay, so I think you can see my screen now. Okay, cool. Well, yeah, so I mean, I think everybody on the call is generally aware that curbside composting is expanding and it's going to be covering all of the Bronx. And that's why I'm here tonight to talk on that and to answer the questions. I know there's going to be a lot of, questions in the weeds and nitty gritty questions. And I'll do my best to address everything as that comes up. And then I might have to get back to you all on some of those. So I'll give you my email at the beginning for follow-up. It's ahoyles at dsny.nyc.gov. So my name's Andrew Hoyles, ahoyles at dsny.nyc.gov. And the goal of the presentation, it really helps us to make sure that folks are aware of what the program is and not so much what it isn't, but just to get the truth out there as far as what the department is offering as far as a weekly service goes. Answer the questions that are focused on curbside composting, residential curbside composting. That's what I'll be covering today. And then if there's questions on like the former programs or the history of curbside composting as it existed in the Bronx for the pilot program or the former version of the program, then hopefully I can touch on those if there's questions. But I'll really be focusing mostly on just the existing or the future service. The service is going to be starting in 2 weeks. So right, work service is expanding currently, or if you live in, if you have friends or family in Brooklyn or Queens, they have active service. But this fall, starting the second week in October, the week of October 6th, the Bronx, Staten Island, and Manhattan will all start receiving curbside composting service. Um, the slide that you see here, we're going to update that in 2 weeks to say that the current community boards that have service in the Bronx Community Board 8 that had legacy program, the opt-in program, that's just, all those addresses are just going to be kind of removed from that opt-in, and they're just going to have regular weekly curbside composting service. Okay. So that's the service update, right? The programs for all residential buildings that are private residential buildings. That includes single-family homes, small apartment buildings, and multi-resident high-rise buildings, as we call them. And there's no sign up or opting in or um, you know signing up for service or assigning for service. This program's similar to trash and recycling, where at the department side, we'll just have a collection route, and it's driven by a sanitation crew, and they collect the material they see that's set out. Similar to trash, similar to recycling, right? Nobody signed up for trash collection. Nobody signed up for recycling, traditional recycling. That's just put out at the curb, and sanitation just collects it. So similar with composting, uh, it'll be once a week on the recycling day of the week, every week. And there's no pauses, no stops, aside from a holiday or aside from a uh, seasonal weather event that would we would push out notifications that we're pushing or canceling a collection for snow collection, for snow plowing or something like that. But this is no pause for the program. And then I'll talk about like mandatory and what that means. Mandatory separation of composting goes into effect for with each borough for each after each rollout or once the service effectively starts. Um, Basically, what that means is that the program's mandated for participation, and then sanitation is allowed to provide fines to enforce the mandate after select time. So for leaf and yard waste, it's broken into leaf and yard waste and into food scraps and food soil paper. Leaf and yard waste, there was a rule that was set by Department of Sanitation. So for leaf and yard waste mandate, which is important to note for fall leaves, that's starting really 3 months is when fines can be given after service starts. So I think sometimes this is a little confusing, and it's confusing to me too, but I hopefully can explain it so people understand. While the program starts off to be mandatory, there's a 3-month warning period before residents can be fined, before an enforcement agent or a sanitation supervisor can provide a fine for leaf and yard waste being commingled with trash, which is effectively how sanitation writes tickets. Right, so 3 months after October starts us the ability to write tickets for this in January of the new year. Whereas with food scraps, food sale paper, um, that type of putrescible waste, the warning period actually starts when service begins, and it goes all the way until the spring of 2025. So there's a 6-month period basically starting in April when sanitation will be able to issue summons for that same issue, for having food waste commingled with trash or commingled with recyclables and not set out in a for curbside composting. So the law that's out there, that it's basically written in this such a way that there's currently a warning period after service starts, um, where the city cannot issue fines, but then they can start giving fines once the entire city has had service for 6 months. Okay, that'll bring this entire city will have curbside composting service starting in April 2025. And um and just so I'm getting a little bit ahead of myself with as I'm pausing, maybe waiting for questions, but I actually on my screen I don't see anybody anymore, so I'll wait until I guess after my presentation to answer any questions, so as you have them. So hope that's okay with everyone. um One of the things that um this administration really is pushing is why composting is important, as it's a way to keep rats out of the trash, right? If the food waste is put into containers, then um, rats can't get to it, or they can't as easily get to it. Um, there's also the goal of mitigating uh, food waste and other you know organic matter from the landfill. So the climate impacts associated with this program, I'm one. My background before working at the department was with community composting, so I'm very familiar with this. But as far as the department's concerned, they really want to focus on how this program keeps our home and neighborhoods clean. Right, we're trying to get this stuff off of the curb where it's getting torn open and causing messes in neighborhoods, and stop exporting this material out a little bit at a time. and then make the beneficial material compost or clean energy. And I think it's important for, as folks are aware with what can and can't be composted, um, to not overthink it. Um, this slide shows what can be composted. Anything from your yard, anything from your kitchen, cooked or uncooked or gone bad, meat, dairy, um, all those types of things are okay. And the reasoning behind that is this is industrial, um, municipal management of organic waste. So some of it's going to compost facilities throughout the city. Some of it's a large portion of it's going to Newtown Creek, to the DEP wastewater treatment facility, where the pre-processing that goes into any of the material that DSNY collects is best, and that allows us to take in any type of organic matter. That's a mouthful. So what I say all that is when talking about this with, if you're talking about with any of your friends or families or constituents, try not to overthink it. Right? If it grows, it goes. Is honestly what where when I'm talking to the public more generally, I like to stick it with that, and then let folks have questions if they do, but try not to overthink it about like, well, this has this in it or this has this in it. We'll take it. We try to screen out any contaminants, and we're really trying to just grow understanding and participation in the program. And that starts with having a very low barrier to entry, as far as what can and can't go inside of the compost pile, or the compost bin, excuse me. So leaf and yard waste, that's plants, leaves, twigs, and grass. Um, that can be set out in paper, lawn, and leaf bags, or in the composting bin that you have, or even in an unlined bin. And then food scraps, food soil paper, that has to be placed inside of a composting bin. So either one of our brown bins that we provide, that you can order one, um, as a starter bin, or you can purchase any additional bins, or you can use any bin of your own as long as it's 55 gallons or less, and has a attached lid, a secure lid. The thing we also want to make sure of is that no metal, glass, plastic, or uh, cartons, so those recyclables, those traditional recyclables, those don't go inside the compost, or any clean paper, clean cardboard, and no trash. So bathroom trash is typically the stuff that I think people sometimes think of, well, as that's technically kind of compostable, right? Like a diaper waste, or pet waste, and hygiene products and things like that. And that's just that's the sanitation department's considering that trash, and it's not something that we were um, considering that would be put into the composting bin. I mentioned just for a second, where the material goes, and um, I'll try to elaborate a little bit on this in this slide. And the majority of the material as it's collected goes to Newtown Creek wastewater treatment plant. Um, that's where the material is co-digested with wastewater, and the process there has been in place for a number of years, and it's continuing to be the process, though sanitation is making efforts to divert more material to our composting facility on Staten Island. Anaerobic digestion converts compostable material into biogas, which is a renewable energy. Um, and there's also facilities within the region where sanitation has in the past exported materials to for composting. But this is the current map as of, if we're talking about October, if we're talking about 2 weeks, this is what the scenario is going to look like, where the material from Manhattan, Staten Island, and the Bronx, Brooklyn, and most of Queens will be going here. And then material in Staten Island will be going to the Staten Island compost facility. And smart bins, as they exist, they'll continue to exist. There's not additional funding for new smart bins, but they do still operate throughout all 5 boroughs of the city. They're open 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. You do have to have an app to access the smart bin. You have to download the smart bin app um, onto your smartphone. We bring this slide up because sometimes people have the question, well, I'm planning to, compost, continue to use the smart bin to compost. Am I going to get a ticket if I don't participate? Or, and the answer is no to that. They wouldn't get a ticket for not setting out. They would get a ticket for commingling organic waste in their trash. Um, But also sometimes people like to start thinking, well, I'm kind of concerned for me and my family how we're going to actually start participating before day one. How can we do this? And I suggest people can start, collecting their food waste and take it to a drop off or a smart bin, right, where you can get into the practice or the habit of separating out your food waste from the trash in the kitchen, which is where this is most of the work is taking place on the home end, and then delivering it to one of the smart bins for composting. That can get the family or the individuals who you live with on board with how to participate in this program, right? For recycling, usually there's a bin in the kitchen underneath the sink, maybe, or to the side, somewhere in the kitchen where you would deposit the recycled bottles and the paper, and that's formed as a habit that people know how to do. But when there's a new program like curbside composting, that might be new to some people in the house. So getting them started even before the first week in October is possible by separating out your food scraps and then delivering it to either a smart bin or one of the drop offs located somewhere else within your neighborhood. And that's kind of why we have this next slide where it's like training how to compost, and it's explaining what are the kind of guidelines that sanitation is communicating. And there's a few things here. One is place the food waste in any labeled bin, 55 gallons or less, with a secure lid, or your DSNY brown bin. So a few things about that. One is, in the rework of this program, since the legacy versions of curbside composting, it's been trying to be streamlined a little bit to be a little bit more um, user friendly, or reducing the barrier to entry is what I want to say. Where before you had to use DSNY's brown bin for service, and you could only use DSNY's brown bin. And versions of our service in the past, we required certain ways of how you had to set out your brown bin. But that's not the case any longer. It should be very easy to use the service, but there's a lot of information out there. Um, Basically, you can use any bin as long as it's 55 gallons or less with a secure lid. We have a composting bin decal available for free on our website on nyc.gov/sanitation materials is the link you can go to download it, or sorry, to order it. We'll mail it to you for free, and you can put that on your bin. So you don't have to order a bin necessarily, but we also, for this moment, while supplies last, we do have one free brown bin that we'll give out to any resident in the Bronx, Manhattan, or Staten Island, that they can order one right now until supplies last. So they can go to the nyc.gov/curbside composting to then order one of those bins, and we'll deliver it. Any bins that were ordered before the end of August, so bins that were ordered by uh, August 31st, will be delivered before the start of service, and then the delivery team is working through the backlog after that. So the guarantee is not there if they ordered them, after August 31st, but they work through the backlog to make sure that delivery happens. So there's one free bin that's going to people who order one in the Bronx, Manhattan, and Staten Island while supplies last. And for additional bins, right, there's the two options, right? You can use, again, any bin. And I just name this because I think a lot of times people have been missing this in the conversation we've been having. You can use any bin as long as it's 55 gallons or less with a secure lid, or you can purchase a DSNY brown bin from Department of Sanitation at another web page, bins.nyc. And all this material, all this information, it's a lot. I'll send these slides out, but also it's available at nyc.gov/curbside composting. It's all kind of just written down there in long form. So all that to say, we want to see the material in a bin, in a hard-sided, securely lidded bin of 55 gallons or less. We want to see the bin lined with a clear plastic liner, a compostable liner, or a paper lawn and leaf bag that can be put in there that assists with servicing the bin on the sanitation worker side. It keeps down odors. It keeps your bin clean. Um, and bags within bags is totally fine. So people sometimes line their brown bin, and then in their home they use single-use carry-out bag, single-use grocery bags, excuse me, or maybe they use compostable baggies. All those things within inside of bag, that's all okay, and that's because of the pre-processing equipment that's available on the facility side. We separate them out. And so it's not a problem. And actually kind of helps with people when they're sharing a bin. could be a 50-unit building. They're all using one bin, and that kind of makes the whole management of it on the building staff side a lot easier. And then we suggest tying the bag closed for putting before putting it to the curb for collection each week, the night before recycling, but the night before the recycling day. So that was a mouthful, but for leaf and yard waste, it's pretty much the same. You get the same kind of um, recommendations or rules from sanitation. Um, Leaf and yard waste, if you're only setting out leaf and yard waste, if you have a backyard or a front yard, or you have lots of fall leaves or grass clippings, you can place it in the bin, the 55 gallons or less bin with a secure lid. You can also, for leaf and yard waste, use paper lined leaf bags or clear plastic bags. So that's the one sort of rule that's allowed to have compostable material that's outside of the bin, is if it's leaf and yard waste. And we're a little bit ahead of this, but in the Brooklyn and Queens program last year, Christmas trees, which normally we had a special Christmas tree collection in the first 2 Saturdays in January. Um, well, most likely we'll be seeing that program won't exist. That there will, since there's a citywide composting day, the recycling day, the Christmas trees will just be able to be set out for collection on their composting day. Same thing with fall leaf collection. Program probably won't need to exist anymore. I haven't gotten that definitively told to me, but that's how it looked for the last programs in Brooklyn and Queens, and it just looks like that's going to be the day, because the way it will operate, because there's a dedicated composting day. So that means also bundling twigs and branches. You can set that next to the curb, next to the bins or the bags full of compostable leaf and yard waste. Just a few more slides here before I get into the questions, but these were some of the misconceptions that we always hear about. It's attracting rats and pests, which is why the bin is really critical here, right? The food waste doesn't necessarily attract the rodents because it's being composted. It attracts the rodents because it's a food source for them, and that food source would be in the trash normally, but now we're separating it out and putting it into a bin where they can't access it. And people framing that as complicated. Um, I've been thinking about this for the past. I've been at the department 10 years, and I've been working in curbside composting and composting in general for longer than that. And I think the complication is there's a lot of overthinking it a lot of the times. And I say that humbly. I think that the rich network of composting around the entire region, there's a lot of information and differences, and I think that's to be respected. But for the sanitation's program in New York City, as of next week or 2 weeks from now, it's really put the material in a bin at the curb and set it out for collection, and we'll collect it. And that's our approach. We really want to make sure that people know that it's a service that sanitation offers, like trash and recycling, and it's no more complicated than that, because we're really trying to grow participation. Um, the inability to compost meat, bones, and dairy and cooked food isn't the case with this program, because it's an industrial scale composting facility, industrial scale processing of this material more of. And we also do allow plastic bags because the machinery in this industrial scale is filters it out, screens it out essentially. And the concern about compost getting thrown out, um, which I've not really understood where this misconception comes from. I think sometimes people have seen that um, material gets put into the same truck, but we do have many split body trucks, meaning one side of the truck is for garbage, for trash, and the other side's for compost. And then for recycling, one side is for metal, glass, plastic, and cartons, and the other side is for paper. So that's something that we put there, just if they're seeing that, if you're seeing that, then make sure that you're actually seeing it going into if it's all going into one truck, then that is an issue, and you can report a missed collection or improper collection, excuse me, from 311 on 311. You can report that to us, or you can report that. You can email our team, outreach at DSNY.NYC, and let us know that this is something that's happened. And we need some proof if you're emailing us, but you can also, 311 is going to need proof as well. And proof, by that I mean they're going to need to know what time this is happening and what day of the week it is, and what your address is, so that they can understand which collection vehicle was coming down that street at that time. Just a few tips before I touch on just two or three more things for what was been happening for outreach, just to sort of preemptively answer some questions that's been happening. But tips for storing food waste inside the home. We really wanted to lower this again, this like barrier to entry here. So lining any type of or capturing any type of your food waste in a bag in its own separate bag. We call them kitchen containers. We have kitchen containers that we occasionally give out periodically at outreach events, but we don't give them out in the same way we did in the past for folks who live in CB8, CB10, CB11, and CB12. When we rolled the program out back in the day, we were automatically giving out those kitchen containers. We're no longer doing that. But you can use any type of container. Basically, it's your organics. You're in your house organics bin, not your at the curb organics bin, and then cleaning that frequently, and storing that bin or those scraps in the freezer to prevent odors. We put ours in my house in the refrigerator. It's just easier than storing it in the freezer, and it doesn't freeze, so I can move it around if I need a little bit more space. But basically, what this is, I think sometimes people are like, "What are you talking about? Of storing food waste at home?" And it's basically just we need an alternate for the material that's going to be composted from than putting it in the trash can, right? If you've always been putting your food waste in the trash can, you're going to need to put that somewhere other than the trash can. And that's what a little kitchen container, kitchen caddy, or just a bag that you have on your counter or keep in your fridge or freezer is going to be used for. Have a sip of water here. For for your bin itself, the suggestions we have are, put your address on it. It's your bin. These aren't sanitation's bins. We do put RFID tags on the bin so that we know what address it has been delivered to, but we're not like monitoring anything like that. This is your bin. This is the bin that, clean it out as you need it. Mark it up as you need it, so to make sure that this is, James's bin on 123 Main Street. Um, Tie the bag closed before set out and latch the lid whenever the bin is set out at the curb. This will prevent contamination, spillage, odor, all those types of things. Okay. And as far as set out goes, when can these bins be set out? After 6 p.m., the night before collection. So the night before your recycling collection is when the composting bin can be set out, whether it's DSNY's composting bin or you ordered your own or you have your own and you just have marked it with your own decal. If you're putting leaf and yard waste out or trash out in bags, it has to be placed out at 8 p.m. 8 p.m. or after. The one note here is just to read non-recyclable bulk items should be set out on your trash only collection day. So non-recyclable bulk items, we actually use the term large items. Those non-recyclable things like a bed frame or a bathtub or something like that should be set out on the trash only collection day, not the recycling day, because of those split body trucks that I was talking about earlier. They just have a harder time compressing the large items like a bed frame or a dresser or something like that. One little slide on residents and buildings with 10 units. It's really important to understand like this program, while it's mandated, while sanitation's running it and there's no signups or anything like that, we're just running the program uh, borough wide. That building managers have to set this program up for success for their buildings, and building management know how their buildings will work. And there's also lots of different types of buildings in New York, so we can't really mandate one specific setup for them. We have to mandate that they participate. We offer a specific info session weekly for building management, building staff. So that's something that people, if they represent buildings on this call, they can sign up or have their staff attend, and we go more deeply into the processes, how they should maybe set up their buildings or some popular options for setting up their buildings for success, how to educate the residents in the buildings, right? Because there could be 10 units, 50 units, there could be 100 units, there could be 500 units. All those exist in New York, all those exist in the Bronx. They're all going to have different best management practices for their recycling and composting. And we can provide educational guidance, materials, and outreach for those residents and for those building staff. And to do so, they can attend one of those webinars or info sessions or email me or the outreach team They can also utilize some of the free resources at nyc.gov/sanitation materials, or request one of those events that I was saying for us to come and talk to the building staff at on.nyc.gov/event request. Um, I heard just, and I wasn't trying to eavesdrop, but I did hear somebody say that they did talk to one of the contracting staff who was doing some canvassing. So some of the things that we are doing at the department to try and do education and build uh, the buy-in and participation. Canvassing is happening of all 1 to 9 unit buildings. We are in the Bronx right now, and the team that is doing this is a contracted team, and then they're moving to Manhattan and then moving to Staten Island this fall. The mandate and the data that's been provided is all 1 to 9 unit buildings. For large property management companies and tenant organizations, we've been doing targeted calls, trainings, and engagement with some of the large um, management companies. This includes also working with REBNY. This includes working with RTPJ. This includes working with the New York Building Management Association, and then many other property management companies. We've been working with them more one-on-one to talk with their building managers, their operators, and their staff to ensure that they know how to participate, what the fines are, what the best management practices are. In addition to our info sessions for residents and staff and things like that, we also have tabling events that we can occasionally get to. We have a small outreach team here, but we do try to get to the public when we can, get out into the field when we can, when we're not doing one of these more broad-based outreach efforts. Um, and this is what the in-home mailer that's been sent out. That's the old one. I don't know. I thought I had the updated slide. It should have been the Bronx slide that's showing this, but there was a mailer that's landed in homes that has all the details on the service start date, and that's sent to all residents, right? Not just the building staff or the building owners, but to all residents. And the goal really behind that, the leadership at sanitation, was to make sure that tenants are running to the building staff or the building management and being like, hey, I want to participate in this program and it's mandatory. Let's figure this out together. And I think that's really smart in the sense that um, the way that this program will work in every single building is when there's pressure coming to those buildings from both the people who live in that building and from sanitation on the collection side, from tickets or summonses or warnings, right? Um, there have been times in the past where we've emailed the building staff or the building management, and they say like, "Oh, we never got anything," and they just kind of shrug their shoulders. You didn't tell us anything. But actually, if we let all the tenants know and all the public know that they have to, get this set up with their building staff, that they have to ask the question, where is this going to be going? How do I make recycling work in my building in general? That's going to be a lot more effective, right? So we did have the comprehensive educational mailer to all residents. And then we've been doing a lot of paid advertising through a combination of social, community, and ethnic media, um, radio ads, print, and newspaper, just to try to get the word out. Okay, so I hope I was able to cover just the basics of that part of the presentation. I think this is where I'm open to questions. If you how would you like to do this? Would you like to moderate the questions, or
Sure.
are people just going to
Yes.
ask them themselves, or
Yes, I would
okay,
love to do that.
okay.
And if anybody wants to come off of mute and to expound upon your question after you hear me ask it, if there's something you want to follow up with, feel free to just kind of come off and do that. So,
And I'll stop sharing if that makes sense.
sure, sure.
Okay.
We can get into a conversation styled. Great. So I think one of the first questions that we have here is about, actually, I'm going to just go from the bottom and work our way up. Um, Somebody asked about bamboo products like toothbrush and bristles, like if can that be composted with this program?
Yeah. So yeah, that would be fine to be composted in this program. Um, and anything that's advertised as compostable, if that's what that that product is, then we would accept it at this point. Um,
Excellent. Then another question. Yeah, sorry, I'm like they're like a little bit scattered for me.
no worries, no worries at all.
So somebody asked about living next to a community garden and why they can't just use that bin. So the community gardens also are able to participate in
Yep,
this program,
yep,
correct? So
yep.
with the brown bins that get set out on the recycling day, which is the same thing like on on the street. So the person is asking why can't they use that bin? And the question, I'm assuming they can.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. That's correct. They would be able to use if let me just say the question how I think I'm hearing it. If that
Mhm.
community garden has a brown bin or a composting bin and they're setting it out at the curb for recycling on this recycling day for collection, yes, that resident or that individual could use that bin as well for their compost needs.
Great. Now somebody's asking about how private and public schools can participate with this new comprehensive rollout.
Yeah, schools and all DOE schools actually have curbside composting. They have since the start of this. I'll say this the start of this school year, but as late as early as beginning. Forgetting the exact date, but we started citywide school organics last year.
And
Okay.
how
Um,
is that connected? Okay, I got y'all, and just so you know, these other questions are coming in as he's talking, so I'm with
yeah,
y'all.
yeah, yeah. No, certainly, certainly. I see
Um,
them popping
but
up.
I'm curious if you can just talk a little bit more. I find that sometimes the messaging is separated. So I imagine that this person is asking, and please forgive me or clarify if I'm wrong, but I'm assuming that they're asking, like, in thinking about residential curbside rollout,
Right.
what are the ways that private and public schools and institutions are very much connected to that? Because it's still the same concept, maybe a different execution. But
Yeah.
is there a way that there's been a really clear connection between curbside in schools?
Well, no, I mean, I want to say that they are different, and they're different for very specific reasons. The residential curbside composting routes are designed to handle residential curbside composting um, targets, and they're planned around like the same collection schemes that trash and recycling are set out. Whereas school composting routes are based on targets that are for school material, school food. They're funded through different streams. They're federally funded versus funded through, the city's paying taxes for the Department of Sanitation. The collection happens Monday through Friday, and then doesn't happen on Saturday and Sunday. Whereas um, residential collection would be one day a week on that recycling day, which sometimes there are Saturday recycling days for collections. Um, and so it is different, right? It's not something that we try to like say like, oh yeah, let's think about. They're wholly different for a lot of different reasons. Just the material is actually quantity wise it's different as well, and training wise it's very different as well, where we have to work with an agency, right? We have to work with a different agency, whereas this we're educating and talking to the public who's setting out the material in that fashion. So I don't I think it's important that if people want to figure out how their school is participating, they should be in touch with us via email, because then I'll put them in touch with the schools team. But we're not trying to connect the two together. We want residents to set out the material for the residential day of the week for collection, and not um, kind of mix it with schools at all.
Okay. So there's a couple of questions here around enforcement. So I know you spoke about that a little bit around like kind of the 3 month period, and
Hmm.
that was something else, and then something else was like 2025. But what somebody's asking is there an inspector going around and looking inside black trash bags? The person is concerned about homeowners or buildings being fined when someone walking down the street throws their food on the go.
Right.
It's New York City. So like
No, definitely.
kids
Yeah,
doing
yeah, yeah.
stuff, yeah.
I know. So um, I understand where that fear comes from. Um, first and foremost. I get it. So as far as who can write these tickets, there's enforcement and also there's supervisors. There's these two bodies of people. Both individuals have a a sheet of tasks that they're doing. Nobody's assigned on sanitation to just go out and give organics tickets. Sanitation works to, they're looking at holistic issues, looking at derelict vehicles, they're looking at, litter, they're looking at trash, they're looking at improper setouts, right? um, so there's not like this individual who's just specifically like Inspector Gadget looking for people who have done improper setouts and putting organics in the trash. That is how tickets will be issued, right? They would be able to, a sanitation supervisor or an enforcement individual would be able to say like, oh, okay, like you have commingled food waste in your trash bag, so I'm going to write you a summons. And these are the exact same summons that would be for you know recycling in trash, right? Like where you can get, depending on the size of your house, a $25 ticket for the first infraction, up to $400 ticket per infraction for the course of a year. But there's not like an individual who's specifically walking down the street looking for a banana peel. They're looking for a slew of different issues that could be happening. And typically the sites that get tickets are sure from inspection or from a enforcement agent seeing some bad behavior, but also sanitation workers on their routes. They inform their supervisors of buildings that are bad agents, right? That they phone in basically like, okay, this building's consistently putting out a bunch of trash that actually should be mostly recyclables and organics, and that's how they inform. And then that's when a supervisor or enforcement usually makes a site visit to stop it and say like, let me actually visit this site and see what's going on. So
Okay.
I say all of that to hopefully kind of reduce the anxiety. That's why there's the long warning period. But also we know that it's not, it's, put the material in the right bin, and we won't be, a bad actor.
Sure. Now there are some questions around contamination, and they're asking about compostable plastics that are labeled compostable. What is the threshold of contaminants, and if they might be rejected or at all? Like, are there
Yeah,
any
they're all rejected for the most
any
part.
contamination concerns? I haven't heard anything about that because I imagine that New Yorkers will have a very nice learning curve, and there will, I'm sure, be a bunch
Yeah,
of right. So, are there, yeah, what are the threshold for contaminants? I know that there are machines that might be able to
yeah,
separate some of it out. Like, can you speak a little bit to
yeah.
that contamination and the
Yeah, so definitely, yeah, and that's a real question. There's no this the techno they're all the material that's collected from sanitation, it goes through pre-processing. And that pre-processing equipment, while it's really great, it's not so sophisticated that it can tell the difference between or PLA, you know, made, compostable made fork versus a single-use plastic fork from Subway or Starbucks or something like that. So they're separated out, and that's just the case, right? That's where it's at right now. And I think that's why in a lot of the time you hear sanitation people talking is like, try not to overthink it. We just want the material, and we'll separate it out. Now that's not the case for the organic material that is the food soil paper, uh, leaf and yard waste, and food scraps. Right, that material is separated. It is the organic slurry that then gets composted or gets put through Newtown Creek egg digesters. So we'll accept the material that's advertised as compostable, or if you think it's compostable, we'll accept it. But we're not like evaluating like what the fraction the threshold is for when somebody's putting too much compostable products, or advertised compostable products, right?
Okay, sounds good. There was a slide before where you talked a little bit about the stats around the percentage of what goes where. And so there was a question around if you had those stats on like a paper or just somewhere that we could find the data around like what's actually being composted, what's actually going to Newtown Creek, etc.
Yeah, I don't know if I had that slide, but I did state that material right now, as of today, everything from Brooklyn and Queens is going to Newtown Creek, and everything on Staten Island will go to the Staten Island compost facility. The material in Bronx and Manhattan will go to the new Town Creek facility as well. And sanitation wants to move more of that material to Staten Island to our compost facility. But that's the current, logistics, right? Um, I think if people want to know like the exact published information of what's collected where, then that's available on the resources page of the Department of Sanitation website, and I follow up with you on that, and that if that's what I think somebody wants to see.
Great. So the resources page, Lilibeth, is what we want to follow up
Yeah.
and get a link for, and we can post that. And it says the Staten Island facilities creates compost. Yes, Angela, the one in Staten Island does create the compost at a larger industrial scale, which actually is another question around what would we need to do if we wanted to set up a tour of the Staten Island facility? Who would be the right person to go to?
Yeah, I mean, you can email me or email outreach at DSNY. I'm not sure if they'll but yeah, it's a good ask. You're the swab, so you think that should work, right? So I wouldn't be. I guess what I'm saying is I wouldn't be making the determination of who you can go to the tour or not. It would be solid waste management, but that would be great. I think for people to be able to go there.
Okay. Great. And if the bin is stolen, how would somebody order a new brown bin? And I
Yeah,
would assume that they have to pay for it the second time
right,
around,
right.
but like where would they go to order that?
Yeah, no, that's questions come up a lot. You would have to order a new bin if your bin's stolen. We've been telling people if you do have a stolen bin, you should put in a police report, like file a police report. That way you know, um, you can't that way if the bin shows up then there will be a track record like okay this person's bin belongs to this address we can re-deliver it to them. To order a new bin you'd have to go to bins.nyc and purchase the bin there.
Okay.
You'll see where the bins are available. So for folks who are aware there's also the new residential bin mandate for buildings that are between 1 to 9 units starting this November 12th. All trash has to be set out in a hard-sided bin of 55 gallons or less with a secure lid. And that's also where you can purchase the NYC official city bin if you choose to use one of those bins, which are going to be the mandate by June 2026.
Excellent. Um, the next question is, oh, that's a repeat question. Will you have separate instructions for collection of pumpkins?
Nope, no separate. That would be food waste. So it would have to go in a bin.
Cool. And just out of curiosity, what have you learned so far with the other boroughs? Like, can you share some success stories and some common hurdles and themes just so that we, yeah, can kind of understand what you all are understanding based on what it is that you're seeing and how we may be able to apply some of that knowledge in the Bronx.
Yeah, definitely. A few things. So as far as like a just because the question on my head is like bin theft, that I don't that's not really happening. So I think a lot of the anxiety, because on our side, we've been hearing a lot. Our emails blow up about like people concerned about the bins being stolen because we used to give out as many bins as people wanted, but that's not
Right.
been happening. Leaf and yard waste is the primary material we're collecting, and so that's a good thing. That should be helpful to let people know that we will love to take all the leaf and yard waste. Don't limit oneself to thinking, oh, well, they only need a little bit, or oh, I won't get to that, or "Oh, that's just a little bit of leaves." We that is a material that is very easy for us as the department to collect, to manage. It doesn't have any um, household or building wide concern in the way. So as far as getting people to early adopt the program, I think that's really great, and it's something to lean on as far as. Um, so as I'm saying this, like if you're the individual in the household or individual in your building who's trying to sell this to get other people to participate in it to grow participation, then starting with leaf and yard waste is really important because it gets people to start, right? I think the other thing is lining the bin, making it very easy for people to participate by reducing the ick factor, the yucky factor. That's really important. And the issues that I think that existed in the past in the legacy programs, I do think that one of the things was the kind of overcomplication, and I'm really want to stress like try not to think about it too much in the way of the past, like the really specifics. Oh, can this really specific product go in or not? And it's like, yeah, it most likely can. If it was something that grew from a plant, then it can most likely go inside of our bin. So try not to think about it too much. Um, I think the last thing I'll say for people who are in multi-unit buildings, you really have to form if you're getting resistance from the building, I want to say form you know talking points around how you would engage with your building staff and building management around having this program work for you. If you want to have sanitation visit the site, we can try to do that. If you're trying to get people in the building, getting a couple of your neighbors to talk to the building staff is really important. It's really, really important to be able to get the program started.
Great. So you mentioned before about making an effort to divert more to the compost facility on Staten Island. What is, I guess, like, what is the full capacity for like tonnage per day there? But also, what is the mechanism or the plan, right, to try to get it there? Like
Yeah.
making an effort to do it, what is the actual effort to making that happen?
Yeah, no, I don't know. I don't know what the total answer to that question would be right now. Um, I believe it's 2,000 tons per day is the full capacity. That's not what's being generated
Of
or
course.
brought there, right? But that's what could be, maximized out at that facility. It's a 27-acre facility.
Mm.
Um, yeah, and I'm not sure. I'm not sure what that answer would be as of today. But the thing is like we need to have people start participating in all of our recycling programs, right? Traditional recycling's 20 years of a program, and we still have a long ways to go there. So um, I do think it's in getting people to start participating, and that's going to be able to be a possibility next week or in 2 weeks from now.
Hmm. Now there's a question that says, will buildings be required to have the brown bin?
As specifics to like having a composting bin, no, the brown bin isn't required. It's just a composting bin. To put out food waste, you have to have a bin that has 55 gallons or less and a latching lid. That's what's required for setting out your food waste and food soil paper. But
And
the
labeled.
DSNY brown bin isn't the specific requirement.
Okay, great. You mentioned before about yeah, the building would have to provide a bin. Is there a minimum?
Similar to how the building provides trash bins and recycling bins, the
Mhm.
building would have to provide a composting bin. Yes.
Yeah. There's a question, is there a minimum sized bin? Like the max is 55 or less, but is there a minimum size?
No, it just has to have a latching lid.
Okay. Yes, it will happen in 2 weeks. So all right, if I put out the food scraps and they don't take it, Andrew, I'm calling 311, but I'm also texting you with a photo. Like, hey, you said the launch was October. What
Yeah,
what did we miss?
right. Second week in October, the first week. People have been saying the first week of October, which is next Monday. It's not the first week of
It is
October; it's the second week. So, but yeah, no, certainly, yeah. If people have missed collections, they should report it. Every single missed collection has to be cleared out, has to be visited by a sanitation supervisor. I don't want to put this program on my shoulders and then like it falls apart or falls through, right? There's a whole set of arrangements to make sure that miscollections don't happen. And if they do, then they're addressed, right? So if you miss a collection, call through on one, report it. That's how it has to happen. It has to happen the day after the actual miscollection has happened.
Yeah. How fun is that? So you mentioned before about the weekly trainings or
Hmm.
like webinars and info sessions. Where would we find that information?
That is located on our website, nyc.gov/curbside composting. We have um, translated info sessions that are also listed, and there's Spanish and Chinese monthly, and those will be going through until the end of the year. You'll see them listed, which weeks are which weeks have which trainings that have translators, and then also you'll also see if you're representing a building or want to have your building staff attend one of the ones that are specifically targeting for building staff. You'll see those ones listed as well. Those ones also have translations.
Perfect. Thank you. And then there was a question about the ethnic publications that were used for marketing.
Hmm.
around being curious about which audiences the advertisements went to. So are you able to speak to either what those publications were or yeah.
Yeah, I can't. I'm not on the press side of things, but I can follow up with you on that. I can
Okay.
definitely follow. I'll just ask the press team
Yeah,
tomorrow
that
what
would
that.
be really helpful.
Mhm.
Because I mean, I did get a mailer, but that was like where it stopped. For me, I
Yeah,
haven't really seen a lot going on, and so I'm really trying to figure out how we can be supportive
yeah.
as a SWAB when it comes down to this, but also still lifting up what's happening with local community composting. So
So
that
so
yeah, go ahead.
I'll make sure to follow up also with there's like a influencer packet. Influencers used lightly there, where it's like uh, social media gifs and also talking points and also icons that can be included in email for any type of publications that external parties can do to promote the program and talk about it. And then we'll make sure to send that your way as well. That can hopefully be shared out and then people can use it in that way. Um, and I believe there was supposed to be a presser that the commissioner was supposed to speak with the community and ethnic media team, but we've canceled a lot of. There was a death of a sanitation worker
Yeah,
last weekend, so we've canceled a lot of actual of these type of meetings. So I'll follow up with that though. Okay, and get back to you about what that actual list is.
excellent. Thank you. And then there was a question around ordering the decals in bulk to hand out at a meeting. And
Mhm.
Carla tried to do that, but it was not easy. So is there
Yeah, we limit on our sanitation page because we get a lot of phishing and stuff like that that happens where people try to do that. So if you email us, we'll do put the order for you. Okay.
perfect? Excellent. We love direct solutions. Thank you, caller, for that. If there are no further questions, this is the moment that we're going to round it out,
Okay.
and really wrap it up. If you have any last questions, fire questions, anything that's burning on your heart and soul, now is your moment to get it out. We will try not to flood Andrew's inbox because Andrew is being so kind, saying just
I
email
have
me.
a
But
question.
yes, please, Priscilla, go ahead.
Yeah, so I'm trying to understand the logistics because I don't want, there's only two people in my building. I'm in a residential building. And so there won't be a lot of food scraps per se. But when you put the bin outside, can you chain it? If I have like a fence and they're actually pulling the bag out of the top, so they don't need to have the box right on the curb because they
No,
walk
that's
like,
I'll Priscilla, if you don't mind, I'll interrupt because I think that comes up a lot, and you can't leave the bin chained up or anything. That's technically an improper set out. It has to be at the curb. And when you put a chain on it, then the sanitation workers sometimes see that as I don't have to collect this because it's improperly set out.
oh,
So the bin can live up against your building chained up, but for set out for when you're putting the bin at the curb for collection by DSNY, it has to be freestanding effectively, if that
okay.
makes sense.
Yeah, it makes sense.
It's a good
Thank you.
question. We get it all the time.
Yeah, because we had I'm part of the community garden. So we had a
Okay.
meeting and a lot of people that was like, well, what does it look like when you put it out there? What's the setup? A lot of
Mhm.
people were very confused.
Okay. Yeah, the setup looks similar to, um, you know, trash receptacles or recycling receptacles that are set at the curb for their collection. It's just going to be either in a DSNY brown bin or your own composting bin um, that's set up the night before collection starting at 6 p.m. And then we collect in the morning starting at 5.
Okay, thank you.
Go ahead, Karen.
Oh yeah, I just wanted to ask this question while because it's been kind of a
Oh, shoot.
frustration to me. It doesn't really have to do with composting, but in my
Uh-oh.
neighborhood, there's this kind of memorial park and it's kind of gated up, but people always throw trash in there, like through the gate. And I mean, it's like 2 years and no one's cleaned this park. And I don't know like who to call or like do I call the 311? I mean, it's kind of I don't know, it's just like it's like all this trash. It's like I see this same trash from 2 years ago.
Yeah. It sounds like it's
Oh.
a 3-in-1 for dumping, for illegal dumping.
Oh, illegal.
Um,
So even if people like neighborhood people just, throw their stuff and
Yep.
they never clean it, it's still like,
Yeah, that'll at least get
illegal.
a supervisor to go inspect it.
Oh,
Yeah.
okay, okay.
Mhm.
Even if it's like locked up, or they would know how to find whoever runs I never see anyone
Yeah,
in there. It's
sorry,
weird.
is it a Parks Department park? You said a park.
No, this is like this memorial park. It's this Louis Serres Memorial Park. It's on Southern Boulevard at like on Hunts Point area and Tiffany and Southern Boulevard. And it's just really weird because all this, I don't know no one ever cleans it. It's like bizarre, and I don't know who to contact.
Yeah, so I would start definitely with 3-in-1 because every 3-in-1 has to be reviewed. We would have to
Okay.
send a supervisor there during a shift and visually inspect what's going on, and then they would um, effectively go from there. That'd be the first step.
Okay. Okay. Thank you. I just, I was thinking about it because it's like always every day. I'm like, who do I call? Like, there's no number. I don't even know who. I even Googled the name of the park. There's no
Yeah,
contact information. So thank you. Thanks.
no problem.
Awesome. All right, thanks, y'all. This was great. Andrew, really, really appreciate you giving us this overview, especially like 2 weeks ahead of this rollout. And we have your email and your information. We'll definitely follow up about some of those other things that you can send our way. But what we're gonna do is absolutely put like links for each of the things that you've mentioned so that it's
Okay.
easily accessible for folks, and we'll just throw it on our YouTube page so that we have it, so that if anybody has any questions about Bronx curbside rollout, there will be a reference point online. So thank you so much, everybody, and have a wonderful rest of your evening.
Thanks a lot. Bye.
Bye. Good night. Thank you.